This video is going to discuss the pluperfect tense in Spanish. Now, before we get into that, I will talk a little bit about the present perfect, which I hope you're familiar with, because the two tenses are both perfect tenses and therefore have a lot of things in common. For instance, they're both formed with a conjugation of haber and the past participle of the main verb. And with the present perfect, we have the present tense of haber plus our past participle, which, remember, is the ado or ido form of the verb. And with the pluperfect, which is otherwise known as the past perfect, but I like pluperfect because it sounds cooler, we have the imperfect tense for haber plus the same past participle. So in terms of what these tenses express, our present perfect is used to say things like I have eaten, whereas the pluperfect says I had eaten. So you can see in both English and Spanish we have our helping verb in a different tense, but the same past participle, which means that it's pretty easy to form this if you have a working knowledge of the present perfect. The only change is that this is going to be in the imperfect instead of the present. And luckily for you, the imperfect of haber is completely regular, which means that you don't have to memorize a bunch of weird conjugations. As a refresher, the imperfect of a regular verb, is as follows: había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. To these conjugations, you can simply tack on your past participle and you are good to go. So let's look at a few quick examples. Perhaps we want to say I had eaten. Well, we start with our subject, take the proper imperfect conjugation of haber, and then stick on our past participle, yo había comido. In a more complicated sentence, maybe she had walked to the park. We would start again with our subject, ella, take the right conjugation of haber, había, our past participle, caminado, and then just add that prepositional phrase in the end, al parque. It's pretty straightforward, and as long as you know the present perfect, the pluperfect comes pretty easily. As one last example, they had left when we arrived. So we have two different verbs going on here. We have our first clause up here, they had left, and then our second, when we arrived. So to start with the first, we'll just assume that it's ellos, then take the right conjugation because you can see had left is a compound tense, it's the pluperfect. Habían salido or habían ido, depending. When we arrived, cuando. Nosotros. Again, assuming masculinity here, you could use nosotras if you preferred. And arrived, you'll notice, is not a compound tense. It is just past tense. And because this is a singular event with a sort of one-off aspect to it, it's going to be in the preterite. So we have ellos habían salido cuando nosotros llegamos, which is the preterite conjugation of llegar, to arrive. So there you go. Hopefully this helps a little bit. I find usually the hardest part for people with the pluperfect is understanding just what it means in relation to the present perfect and other tenses. So as long as you bear in mind, essentially, that present perfect, the present refers to the conjugation of the helping verb. So the past participle is the same for all perfect tenses, and the tense of the perfect, that made no sense. Okay, the present or past perfect refers to how haber is conjugated. And as far as preterite versus imperfect, you just use imperfect for the pluperfect or past perfect, because that's how it works. Good luck with this, and as always, practice makes perfect.